Hello, beautiful micro community here on Tiny Philosophy channel. Let's talk about a question that's come up a bit over the last few months, and I've just taken 5 minutes to sit down and frame an answer I think is going to be helpful for us, which is, what does it mean to be in an ethically adequate relationship with the Holocaust? And here I don't mean what it means for you and me to be in an ethically adequate relationship with the Holocaust, but rather what it means for a society, for a polity, for a society that you live in, to be in an adequate relationship with the Holocaust. And I think that means three things. So let's talk about it. The first thing to understand is something that may sound challenging for people who want to be Zionists with a capital Z, but it's completely intellectually and ethically irresistible, and that is that nobody owns the Holocaust politically. Of course, individuals can own the Holocaust depending on their family and ancestor experience. Families can own the Holocaust, but no society simply owns the Holocaust. Because owning the Holocaust always means needing to be in an ethically adequate relationship with it, which means three things, as we'll find out momentarily. And having or not having these three things is not a card you can get which you can display and say, well, I've got it. It's always a process. It's always about drifting closer to or drifting further away from where you need to be. So, being in an adequate relationship with the Holocaust means that you're in a society that is ongoingly good at the following three things. The first is completely straightforward and uncontroversial. That is just that your society should not cause large-scale destruction of human life needlessly. But having done that, let's look at the two other things that I think are part of this three-point answer. The second thing your society needs to be good at is at minimizing the political expression of destructive human instincts. So it's got to be a polity that's good at keeping at bay the kinds of intolerances that played a part in bringing the Holocaust about. Keeping them at bay, keeping them away from being enacted on a large social scale. And the third thing that your society needs to be good at is historical self-transparency. So it's got to be a polity that relates to its own political past with openness, without vast lies and vast obstructions in vision. You don't want to have a society that relates to its past the way an individual might relate to a relationship from their past, which they have blocked out, which they have an inability to see for what it was, an inability to engage with openly. So you can't relate to your past like an individual who relates to a past relationship with denial. So we're talking about pliancy, transparency about your past, not rigidity and not magical thinking. And so keeping a polity in good shape, in the sense that we have in mind here, is about these three things, and having or not having these three things is always a process in time. You're either drifting closer to being there, or you're drifting further away from being there. Thereby nobody, right, not even a society that contains the greatest number of victims of the Holocaust, can sort of get a stamp and say, we're there. Nobody is there. It's a process of keeping yourself adequate, the society, in terms of the three things that I've put on the table, right? Number one, you don't engage in large-scale destruction of human life needlessly. You tend towards being good at keeping at bay the kind of instincts of intolerance that brought the Holocaust about. And you're good at historical self-transparency. So that's what a society, that's what it means for a society to be in an adequate relationship with the Holocaust. But now let's jump briefly back to the individual level and give ourselves a tip about understanding the Holocaust. Quite different to being in an ethically adequate relationship to it, just understanding the Holocaust. And the quick tip I want to give there is center in your answer to why it happened, I don't know. And what I mean by that is not just staying with I don't know for as long as possible, but even as you move on to developing your own answers about why it happened, that you keep returning back to that space of I don't know. You can ferret back and forth, if you like, between your answer and then again that post whereby you say, well, I don't know. And this really breaks down into three I don't knows, because there are always going to be three modes of explanation when we try to explain anything, including the Holocaust. The first mode of explanation is going to be social explanation. That is explanation that's going to look like questions about how the state works, what social forces you find in the modern world, how power works, how various kinds of expressions of human psychology mediated by institutions humans share work, irrespectively of what culture these humans are in. So that's social explanation. And that's, by the way, something that people tend to find difficult. A good example is, for instance, when we think about the Russian population, we're very bad at comparing what the Russian population is doing with what any population would do when their state engaged in an aggressive war. The second mode of explanation is, of course, cultural explanation. And here you won't talk about the sorts of subjects you're going to encounter in a sociology class, right, to do with power, modernity, institutions. But there you're going to talk about German culture, European culture, Romanticism, the counter-enlightenment. Right? And then the third category of explanation is going to be more straightforwardly psychological explanation. So in all of these three lanes, each of which you need, I recommend that you ferret back as often as possible to where you should start and stay for a long time, which is, I don't know. Lots of love and thank you for being with me.